Hello whiskey lovers and welcome to another one of Mark's Whiskey Ramblings. Today I'm returning to my favorite distillery Auchentoshan, but what we will be discussing today is something very unique, something very special indeed. It is a special decanter, a crystal Glencairn decanter that was released for the Queen Elizabeth II. Now the Queen Elizabeth II is one of those big ocean liners that went across from the UK to the United States and back, and the first class passengers, they got the opportunity to buy this beautiful, rather expensive set of Auchentoshan, a crystal Glencairn decanter that contained this whiskey. It was a 12-year-old and it was bottled at 43% ABV. Now, you have to realize at the time, Auchentoshan's official release at that moment, the standard range, was a 10-year-old exclusively matured in bourbon casks. But for the Queen Elizabeth II, they did something special. They had their first 12-year-old, and at that time that was a mixture of both bourbon casks and sherry casks, and they bottled it at 43% ABV. Now this special set came in this beautiful silk lined box that sports the Queen Elizabeth II logo, and the crystal decanter was numbered and comes with a certificate, and inside is 1 liter of this beautiful liquid 12-year-old at 43% ABV. 1 liter is inside and it's quite heavy. And I have to be honest, it took me ages to be able to add this to my Toshan Man collection. The decanter, okay, you could find it, but with the box and the crystal stopper, that was hard. But even harder was finding the accompanying box that contains the glasses. But finally, the Toshan Man collection is complete with this complete set of Queen Elizabeth II Auchentoshan. Now this was sold to the first class passengers on the Queen Elizabeth II. But if you were not a first class passenger, or you could not afford, or you did not wish to pay as much for this crystal decanter, there was also this regular release, let me put it that way, a 1 liter bottle containing the same whiskey of Auchentoshan 12-year-old and bottled at 43% as well. Or you could buy 1 decanter and then use this as refill, more or less. Anyway, it has to be repeated. Today's 12-year-old is bottled at 40%, if I'm not mistaken, and is a mixture of bourbon cask and sherry cask. But this was the first time they actually did that. Realizing that this was bottled in 1984 and sold on the Queen Elizabeth II in the 1980s, what's inside must be from the early 1970s, maybe even a little bit prior to that. So I guess you could say this is something special to try indeed, and I would like to share my tasting notes with you today. As you can see, I got me another one, and I already opened it up. I poured this at my yearly Toshan Man birthday tasting in 2017. 12-year-old, mixture of sherry casks and bourbon casks, 43% ABV. Beautiful, full golden color. So this is probably early 1970s distillate, bottled in 1984 and sold on the Queen Elizabeth. Let's give this one a go. On the nose. It's a nice mixture of both worlds. You clearly get the bourbon notes with the vanilla, the coconut, but there's also these beautiful sherry notes in there, albeit a bit not overly sherry. This is not deep sherry at all, but you can still get some sultanas and maybe even some rum raisins. It's very accessible and it's very soft and sweet, and that's obviously the triple distillation. Very typical of Auchentoshan, aperitif style whiskey. I love it. On the palate then. Quite creamy, oily, coconut, vanilla, some apricots as well. Again, very gentle and soft, but it does have a little bit of a bite. I'd say ginger and maybe even a clove in there. And that's probably, most likely, a bit of the sherry cask in the mix speaking. But it is very gentle and very soft and warming and soothing. Quite lovely on the finish. Well, the finish clearly is not overly long, but it is soothing with a quite soft, sweet depth. Wow, this is a very quaffable and very soft aperitif style whiskey, but with a twist to it, and that's obviously the sherry influence in these casks. I have to say, this is liquid history. It is so much more than today's 12-year-old, which in its own right is a very, very quaffable and very accessible dram. But this one has this twist in there. I can only explain it as liquid history, something they don't make anymore, something very hard to come by, as are these decanters. It has to be said, it was very hard for me to get this one, but I'm very proud that I was able to add this to my Toshan Man collection, and that I got an extra one to open up to try the liquid inside. And I have to tell you, this is one hell of a lovely Auchentoshan 12-year-old at 43% ABV. Well, I wanted to share this special bottling from my favorite distillery with you, from the Queen Elisabeth II, the ship that, by the way, is no longer ocean worthy. It is currently somewhere in the Arabics being refurbished into a floating hotel, I've heard. Well, so that is liquid history, isn't it? It's no longer available. The ship doesn't even sail anymore. So I was lucky enough to try it, and if you get your chance to try this one as well, you should, because it's clearly something else than the regular 12-year-old today. This is, as I said, liquid history. And that's all for this Whiskey Rambling, and hope to see you at one of Mark's Whiskey Ramblings real soon. And until then, may the malt be with you.